Sparta was not an ordinary Greek city. It was a society built on discipline, obedience, and above all, war. From the moment Spartan boys were taken from their families at the age of 7 and placed into the agoge military system, they were molded into perfect soldiers. Unlike other Greek city-states that thrived on trade, art, or philosophy, Sparta thrived on war. And throughout history, its name became inseparable from the battlefield. Let's journey through the defining wars that shaped Sparta's destiny. The Messenian Wars, building the Spartan state. The story begins in the 8th and 7th centuries BCE, during the First and Second Messenian Wars. Sparta, still rising in power, sought fertile land to support its growing population. To the west lay Messenia, a wealthy region with rich farmland. The Spartans launched a brutal war of conquest that lasted decades. Eventually, they succeeded in enslaving the entire Messenian population, turning them into helots, state-owned serfs who worked the land so Spartans could dedicate themselves entirely to military training. But this system created constant tension. The helots outnumbered the Spartans many times over, and rebellion was always a looming threat. The Second Messenian War erupted around 650 BCE, when the helots rose against their Spartan overlords. Though the Spartans crushed the rebellion, the uprising left a permanent scar. From that moment forward, Spartan society became obsessed with maintaining absolute military dominance. The agoge, the system of brutal training for boys, was strengthened, and Spartan life became even more centered on preparing for war. These conflicts forged the iron foundation of Sparta, a city-state that could never afford to be weak. The Persian Wars, glory at Thermopylae. By the early 5th century BCE, Sparta's reputation had spread across Greece. When the mighty Persian Empire invaded, Greek city-states turned to Sparta for leadership. The Persians, under King Xerxes, launched an invasion with what ancient sources claim was one of the largest armies ever assembled. The most famous clash came in 480 BCE at the Battle of Thermopylae. King Leonidas led 300 Spartans and a few thousand allies to defend the narrow mountain pass against the massive Persian force. For 3 days, the Spartans fought with unmatched courage, holding the line and inflicting heavy casualties. Though they were eventually betrayed and surrounded, their heroic last stand bought time for the rest of Greece to unite. Thermopylae was more than a battle. It became legend. Even in defeat, Sparta's sacrifice inspired the Greeks to rally together. Soon after, the Greeks triumphed at Salamis and Plataea, driving the Persians out. Thermopylae immortalized Sparta as the symbol of resistance, discipline, and honor, a reputation that still echoes thousands of years later. The Peloponnesian War, Sparta versus Athens. After the Persian threat faded, a new rivalry consumed Greece, Sparta versus Athens. These two city-states represented opposite worlds. Athens was a naval power, democratic, rich in art and philosophy. Sparta was a land power, oligarchic and militaristic. The tension finally exploded in 431 BCE, beginning the Peloponnesian War, a conflict that lasted nearly 30 years. The war dragged on in phases. At first, Athens relied on its navy to raid Spartan coasts, while Sparta's armies marched into Athenian lands. But plague struck Athens, killing tens of thousands, including its leader Pericles. Still, Athens fought on. Later, Sparta struck a decisive blow when they secured Persian gold to build a navy of their own. With this new fleet, the Spartans finally defeated Athens at sea, cutting off their supply lines. In 404 BCE, Athens surrendered. Sparta stood as the supreme power of Greece, its warriors now unmatched, its enemies humbled. For the first time in history, Sparta became the unquestioned leader of the Greek world. But this victory carried a hidden cost. Constant war had drained Sparta's resources, and ruling over a fractured Greece would prove harder than defeating Athens. The decline, Leuctra, and the rise of Thebes. Sparta's dominance would not last long. In the early 4th century BCE, other Greek states grew resentful of Spartan rule. The Corinthian War weakened Sparta, but it was the Thebans who delivered the final blow. In 371 BCE, at the Battle of Leuctra, the Theban general Epaminondas revolutionized Greek warfare. Instead of the traditional equal phalanx lines, He concentrated his forces on one side, smashing through the Spartan right wing where their king stood. The Spartan phalanx collapsed, something once thought impossible. For the first time, Sparta had been decisively defeated in a pitched battle. Their aura of invincibility was shattered. Though Sparta survived as a city, it never regained its former power. New forces, like Macedon under Philip II and Alexander the Great, would soon dominate Greece. Sparta faded into history, no longer a leader, but always remembered as the warrior state. Legacy of Sparta. From the conquest of Messenia to the heroism of Thermopylae, from victory over Athens to the crushing defeat at Leuctra, Sparta's history is one of both triumph and tragedy. Their entire society was built on war, on the idea that the state was stronger than the individual, and that discipline and sacrifice were the highest virtues. Though Sparta eventually declined, its legend outlived its empire. To this day, when people think of courage, endurance, and warriors who fight against impossible odds, they think of the Spartans, a city that chose war above all else and carved its name into the annals of history.